You know, guys, these stones, they make me feel, I don't know, they're making me feel weird. Like, I feel like I want to bring balance to the universe, and also like I could kick everybody's ass at once. I don't. It's making me.
Those are toxic things to think,
I guess,
especially in this very small work environment.
Yeah.
I don't. Okay, enough about these gems. Let's get back to our talk, guys. So what I was asking you guys before, do you think that his penis is really purple?
Who, Thanos?
No, Josh Brolin.
Oh.
Well, you would imagine the amount of prophylactics he used, that some of the blood is, kind of choked up. So, yeah, I would say kind of purple.
Okay, follow-up question. Does it have the scrawly chin marks?
Like on the underside or on the top?
No, well, I don't know.
I guess it
would
would be his balls.
I would say, oh, that's
I could
it.
see him there, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
And the head of it is crowned with a gauntlet.
Gauntlet, that's a good idea.
Okay. So I think we're safe, just because I don't think Thanos' scroll chin-like testicles have anything to do with the film or any spoilers. But as the name and I assume title card will suggest for this issue, this is going to be a dangerous sea with obstacles of spoilers that is difficult to navigate even for the wiliest pirate. So I will go ahead and issue yet another spoiler alert. This is a spoiler alert. You are being alerted to there being spoilers.
You know, what's weird is I feel like that spoiler alert button changes every time you press it.
Slightly.
It's weird.
Weird.
Oh, we do that live. So, Derek, you had some stuff that you were going to talk about.
I do have some stuff that I was going to talk about. So the reason that any of these comic book movies get made, because we are in the boom of the comic book film.
Yes.
And a lot of people speculate that bubble's going to burst sometime soon. But, man, with the amount of money that keeps coming in, I don't think that's going to happen.
Now, when you say that, do you mean like they're speculating that like eventually people are going to get tired of comic movies, or they won't make as much money, and so they're anticipating the fall of that?
I would say they both play into each other.
Oh,
that
okay.
superhero film fatigue, if you will.
Yeah.
A lot of there have been people who have said that superhero movies or comic book movies will go. They're like the modern Western, where we had a boom of them for a long, long time, and then you hardly see Westerns anymore.
So I mean. But then I see your other point, though, because then they also say, they keep saying that, but then like Deadpool breaks a zillion records, and like Black Panther breaks.
Well,
a bunch of
Infinity
records.
War is now the highest grossing superhero movie of all time, and it has the highest opening weekend, I think, just of any kind of movie.
I believe so.
Of all time.
Does it now?
Well, I don't think any other movie has had this much of a build-up with years of...
Well, and here's the thing is, how many times have we said on this show those words of it broke a bunch of records, or it's now the highest grossing film, or...
Seems like every time.
Right. They're just so I can...
Another factor in the bubble, though, is that every film that comes out, its budget, like, dwarfs the previous film. Mm-hmm. If the budgets get bigger, the revenue still comes in, but the budgets get bigger, and so if any kind of decline happens, you're looking at a decline versus an incline of cost to make.
Derek, you're the film guy. Do you think, I'm just interested in your opinion on this, do you think that now that we've done a film so big as Infinity War, do you think that, obviously barring the next like half of that story,
right?
Do you think some of these other ones that are coming out that are singular hero again are going to dwindle because of that? I mean, obviously they probably won't make as much money, but do you think it's going to like negatively impact because they've had such a big sort of affair with this last one?
I don't know if it will negatively impact them. I think we are on the cusp of a very interesting time for what happens with these sorts of movies after Avengers 4. And I think that's something we'll probably want to tackle here in a few minutes on where we think that the whole MCU is going to go.
Yeah.
And I think part of my reasoning plays into that. So.
Okay.
The other thing that kind of plays into my reasoning for where I think things are going to go are the connections that the Infinity War film has to its comics roots.
Yeah, sure.
So, the Infinity War is a comic book storyline by Marvel Comics, but that is actually not what this movie is really based on. They took the name from it, much like they took the name The Age of Ultron for Avengers 2, but that is not the storyline of Age of Ultron in the comics.
No.
So they do that. They take a name that makes sense or has a people know what that is, or they've heard of it at least, and they put that on there because it makes better sense for what they're doing. And I fully agree with what they're doing. Like, I don't think it causes too much confusion, because if anything, this just means that somebody's going to go out and go, well, I want to read the Infinity War comic, and then they'll read it and they'll go, well, that wasn't the same storyline. Well, what did have the same storyline? Oh, it's this story instead, which is the Infinity Gauntlet.
Thor Ragnarok is the same deal. Ragnarok is a series in Thor, but it it has nothing. Well, very little.
I was going to say Civil War does like a
Civil War is a good example.
There are parallels to Civil War, but they do pull from other storylines.
Yeah.
Right. The Infinity War is based off the Infinity Gauntlet, which is a 1991 storyline written by Jim Starlin, and the art is by George Perez and Ron Lim. George Perez is actually who, if I'm not mistaken, did the art for Crisis on Infinite Earths from DC. So he does a lot of the big two's cosmic stuff. I feel like he draws a lot of his inspiration art-wise from like Jack Kirby.
Yeah,
I can see that.
And so the storyline is called the Infinity Gauntlet, and it follows there's a lot of small similarities. It's a 6-issue arc, so it's not a huge thing if you want to go out and read it. Now, there are tie-ins to it as all of these big crossover events kind of happen, but I've just kind of stuck to the original storyline, and it tells the full story. It's just not the story of the movie.
Right.
Now, what they share is that both stories in the comic and the movie open with a scene with Thanos. In the comic, it actually has Thanos standing on a moon somewhere, and he is constructed out of rock, the word God.
Oh, yeah.
And what is it?
Mephisto.
Yes, thank you. Mephisto is there, and he's basically just praising Thanos for being a god.
Actually very similar to the speech that Ebony Maw gave at the very beginning of the movie on Thor's ship.
Right.
It's very similar to that speech.
Right. And that's where they drew that inspiration, I'm sure. And then the following scene, it then cuts to the Sanctum Sanctorum. More importantly, it cuts to the window, and then we go into, and we see Doctor Strange. And in the movie, basically somebody crashes through that window into the Sanctum Sanctorum, and in the movie it's Bruce Banner who crashes in, and he warns that Thanos is coming. In the comic, it's the Silver Surfer,
right,
which we obviously can't have in the MCU at this point because the Fantastic Four, the rights are still up in the air, but they are currently owned by Fox.
It's also, do you think that they would... I still think they would probably have worked it out to where it was Bruce and things like that. Like, a lot of it is rights, but I think by this point, the changes that they've made to keep it within their sort of lineup, and none of them really bother me, but I think that they, even if they could have used Silver Surfer, would probably still have not tried to throw him in the mix, you know?
Yeah, like, especially if it was... Do you mean if it was out of nowhere? Like, this is how they added the Silver Surfer?
Right, like, I feel like at
that'd
this
be too
point,
much.
they would, either way, they would have used Bruce.
Yeah, because then it would have been a whole scene of Doctor Strange going... I mean, he was already going, who are you?
Who the hell are you?
But it really would have been like the audience would have needed an explanation as well.
Right.
An explanation of the Infinity Stones happens. They appear like in the air above a character's head in the comic. It's Thanos is... It's more... In the comic, it's more an explanation to the audience, whereas I think in the movie, it's both an explanation to the audience, but it's also an explanation to like Tony, who has no idea that these things are going on.
Right.
On a cosmic level. Thanos in the movie loves... His love, we find, is for his daughter Gamora.
Right.
In the comics, Thanos is in love with the physical embodiment of death.
Yes.
Lady Death.
Lady Death. She is... I mean, how would you describe Lady Death in the comics?
It's like visually very, very Grim Reaper-y, almost mixed with like Elvira. Like an Elvira dress and hood, but with the face and hands of the Grim Reaper of Death. And she is very, like, she's passionate and then she's passionless, like, all at the same time. Because she cares very much for, you know, the safety and the voyaging of dead souls, but at the same time, she has no care for the living, so she doesn't pay too much attention to Thanos, who is just driven mad for her attention, which I think they do a good job in this movie of changing that to his drive, like the thing that he has motivating him is similar. It's something that it's like I said in the last issue, something that he's exhausted by, but I think wanting to end a crusade is more relatable specifically to the MCU that they've built so far than a crusade of like affectionate love. So I think they did a good job, and I almost kind of prefer this story in Infinity War. But yeah, Lady Death is kind of like, if you're a fan of the Pirates of the Caribbean films, almost like Calypso or Tia Dalma. Like, obviously all-powerful, but meh, that's not my job.
Right.
I gave you that job, and then I give you this crab claw.
I would agree with that completely. His love, it changes from a romantic love to a father-daughter love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's still just as poignant. Nebula is in the comic, but Nebula appears in a very different way in the comic.
Holy shit, yes, she fucking does.
She is the great-granddaughter of Thanos in the comics, and there is a nice, if you will, homage, or kind of where they borrowed from for the first time that you see Nebula in the movie, where she's all pulled apart by Thanos.
Which was another example, and I'm sure, if I haven't touched on this already, it's a very good point. Infinity War is full of, like, body horror.
Yes, it is.
And it's great. But this is just I think this is the third example of like severe body horror that happens in this movie. But yeah, she's being pulled apart with the like kind of the Space Stone and the Power Stone in conjunction with each other.
Right. In the comic, she appears as like a rotting corpse. She's basically the embodiment of pain and death because Thanos has brought her back to life, but just kinda. She's a corpse more than anything. And then he begins to just dismember her and put her back together and do all sorts of awful things to her body in front of Death to try and win Death's attention. Thanos already has the Infinity Gauntlet and all the Infinity Stones at the beginning of the Infinity Gauntlet storyline. There's no search for them. There's no us picking up the pieces.
Well, because also in Infinity Gauntlet, it's his third time at least attempting to gather all the stones and wield the Infinity Gauntlet.
Right, something along those lines. Because the Infinity War comes after Infinity Gauntlet storyline.
It's kind of Thanos' unfortunate MacGuffin. Yeah, that's what he's always after, those fucking stones. Mm-hmm. Just pick up some pebbles.
Well, it's like Red Skull and the Cosmic Cube.
Right. In the comic, a little toward the end of that first issue, you actually see Thanos snap his fingers and half the population disappears. So instead of it being we build to that moment, it is in the first issue of this storyline, he does it. And then you start seeing heroes drop and you see people, like buildings collapse and like just society goes into just shit. Mm-hmm. He takes the soul of the Silver Surfer and Drax had been pulled into the Soul Gem. So souls are taken into the Soul Gem into the Soul Realm.
Right.
And that's where they meet Adam Warlock. Thanos cubes and ribbons two characters in the comic as well as in the film. Mm-hmm. In the movie, it is Drax and Mantis.
Which are two other examples of the insane body horror. Like Drax falls into cubes that then turn to stone, and Mantis like springs out into ribbon. But one of the pieces of ribbon is like meat colored and like her eye blinks. Oh God, it's fucking cool but weird.
Yeah. In the comic, it's Eros, who is the brother of Thanos, and Nebula. And once again, he is doing that to try and win the attention of Death.
Poor fucking Nebula.
Doctor Strange takes the place of Adam Warlock in the film because he's the one who sees the bigger picture and doesn't let everybody in on the fact that he has a plan, which is, I feel, what Doctor Strange has done in the movie.
That's the general consensus.
Instead of ripping the stone out of the Vision's head, Thanos rips out the Vision's heart, killing him. Thanos destroys a planet with the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, much like he destroys the moon of Titan and rips it down onto Tony Stark.
That's no moon. That's a Carl's Jr. bacon butter sandwich.
Wow. The floating bodies of a destroyed planet are seen in the debris in space, much like at the very beginning where you see the when the Guardians come into the debris of the Asgardian ship and you see all the dead Asgardians. Captain America is the last person standing against Thanos once they go up like in a toe-to-toe fight. At the end, you see that everything resets to just before half the population disappeared. So like at the end of this whole war and fight and everything goes on, he resets it and we go back, and then it shows Thanos retired to a small house on a farm watching the sunset. So that the ending shot is taken directly from the comic.
Right, yeah. Which, that's the scene that I have noticed is getting, like, the most flack right now. People are complaining because it's like, what an unsatisfying ending. Number one, if you haven't figured out that this is part 1 of 2, you're stupid. And I'm not going to be nice. You're dumb. Number 2, it is a picture pulled out of the Infinity War series and just replicated on screen.
Yeah.
Much like when Mantis becomes disgusting noodle person. Oh, it's fucking in my head.
The other thing that the Infinity War movie really takes parts of from the comics is a miniseries called Infinity. It's from 2013. It's written by Jonathan Hickman, and the art is done by Jim Chung, Jerome Opeña, and Dustin Weaver. The Infinity miniseries that this is another 6-issue arc, and it's actually the one that the other day I mentioned about the variant cover where it's Thanos on the cover, but it was Grumpy Cat's face.
I saw that post. That was great.
That is the series that it is, and what they take from this series is not so much the storyline portions, but more of the look and some of the players of the movie. So you first of all have the Outriders, which that is the name of the aliens, like the space dog looking things that they fight in Wakanda. The look of them and like the kind of mindless, like just following orders, is taken directly from this.
Like the way they
miniseries.
piled on each other and killed each other just to get through that barrier.
Except in the comics, they seem a bit more formidable.
Yeah,
like they seem a hell of a lot smarter. They're referenced as being possibly like one of the best assassins.
Oh shit!
That reminds me,
if they're used properly.
Their imagery reminds me of the Demo dog version of the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. That's all I could think of watching it.
No, that's a good point. I don't know how much like kind of borrowed from that, but I mean they're pretty close to their comic book counterparts.
Yeah, definitely.
The Black Order or the Cull Obsidian. In the movie, they're called the Children of Thanos. So all of those characters, which are Corvus Glaive, Proxima Midnight, the Black Dwarf, the Ebony Maw, and Supergiant are their names in the comic. The Ebony Maw is like spot on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Proxima Midnight is pretty well spot on, like the look and kind of what she is. And then Corvus Glaive, he looks like a dark elf to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's supposed to be, like in Thor, the Dark World, we had the Dark Elves.
Right.
I don't know if he's supposed to be one of those or,
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Like a distant cousin or like maybe a half Dark Elf or something. Kind of like in the comics where we have the Skrull and then you have Super Skrull and you know, things like that.
Right.
The other things that are taken from it, Doctor Strange is captured and tortured by the Ebony Maw. In the book, it's just a one-panel image, and it's Doctor Strange, and the Ebony Maw is like kind of looming over him as if he's like put him under a trance and then is torturing information out of him. War is raged in Wakanda. Once again, in the comic, it is one panel,
right?
And you just see it kind of in passing. And then Thor comes in at the last minute with the killing blow to Thanos. That happens in Infinity.
Oh, all right.
So those are like the few things that I could find that I could draw comparisons to.
This is, to me, what you're talking about is the same way they did Doctor Strange. Where, like, if you read Oath, you're like, oh, that's where they got 90% of that story.
But that's not a problem to me.
No, I don't.
That's definitely a positive.
Let me be more clear. I have no issue with that at all.
Right.
I really think it's smart, and I think it's helping them write good stories because they found it on good. I mean, when you look at like DC, who are just pulling things out of the air, which are garbage, Instead of going, well, a lot of guys that wrote really some of the most prolific comics of our time, we can just adapt those. And that works, where DC's just nonsense, I don't think works.
Well, because Marvel also pretty much sticks to like one concise storyline, whereas they'll also just take like either visual elements or like just moments that provide the same gravity that did in the comics to incorporate it. Like a good example is Ragnarok. They just pretty much took some elements from World War Hulk.
Yeah.
But like there was no real heavy storyline from World War Hulk being incorporated into the movie.
Right. I get what you're saying.
So they're just like taking like pretty much things that comic fans are going to want to see,
like thematic elements,
without making a whole movie about it, or I don't know, TV series if they want to.
For
Even
sure.
down to like the cinematics for something that you had said was, Thanos retires back to his cabin overlooking the sunset, rise, whatever. Another example of that is in Spider-Man Homecoming, when Peter is kind of trapped under the debris after his Vulture fight, where he, the wings tear down the building.
Yeah.
And it's that thing where he lifts the building off of him. That's shot for shot from a comic book. And then also he looks down into the puddle of water, and you see, because the mask is under the water and his maskless face is looking down into it, half of his face is masked by the reflection of the water, so it's half his face and half his mask. But Spider-Man
Which is like
Homecoming,
the most classic picture ever.
exactly, and Spider-Man Homecoming has certain pieces of comic lore, but it's mostly its own story.
Yeah.
So they do both. Like, you have stories like Infinity War that seem like they're almost like plot point for plot point for plot point are almost pulled
Strange too. Yeah.
exactly out of a book, and then some of it is nothing but original content. But I have never seen a Marvel movie and gone, oh well, this is just the retelling of this story. Even
Yeah, and that's
Civil
the
War,
brilliant part about it. And I've said it before on this show that they're making movies for the people who've already read the comics too.
right? And that's it. I've seen Civil War. And I've read Civil War.
Right.
They're similar. I would say they are the most similar story beats from story to comic, specifically with naming conventions. Because, like, Thor Ragnarok is the closest to Planet Hulk, like you said, that you can get. But it also mixes in other elements. But as far as, like, the name Civil War versus Civil War, they are so close to each other. A tragedy happens. The Avengers disagree. Something tragic happens to Tony. Something tragic happens to Cap. They all fight. And big climax at the end.
See, I think that Civil War, like Iron Man, is another one where they pull those beats that you just talked about, but they're not pulling from a specific comic. They're saying he gets captured, he builds a suit, he gets out, uses a suit, fights a bad guy, wins. Like, that is the origin telling
you have a Batman
of Iron Man.
You have a Batman film, and you can do Batman versus Superman did the Batman origin story within a minute. Granted, it was terrible, but it was Alley, gunshot, Bruce is sad, trains a lot, grows up, beats up Joe Chill, becomes Batman.
I think what I would say happily is that you've got, in the case where they are making up their own stories, it seems, Marvel does a fantastic job.
Hell yeah.
In the case where they are borrowing bits and pieces and beats, but making, adapting it, they do a great job. And then they've proven with, like, Doctor Strange or, like, Infinity Gauntlet, I think when they're taking shot for shot from things, they're doing a great job. It seems like no matter where they're drawing their inspiration from, and this is something I've said before on the show about my appreciation for Marvel, is that what they do is stay true to their source material, whether that means they are staying true to literally what happens or the themes and characters presented. They always make sure that at the end of the day, when I'm done watching one of these Marvel films and I go pick up a comic book, even if I never see the same story, I'm seeing the same people. I'm seeing the same characters. I'm seeing the same things on the screen as I am in the pages. And I think they do a great job at that. And that is why I think they're kicking ass at this right now.
And I think part of the reason, along with that, but I think part of the reason that Infinity War was such a success from drawing so much from these books, because like you've listed, they clearly do. Kevin Feige and the Russo brothers and the director of Homecoming and Taika Waititi, who is the director of Thor Ragnarok, and all of these people that come to make these movies, and then the actual stars for the majority of them, and even if they're not, a good example is John Bernthal gets the part of the Punisher, and then he was driving to the studio and stopped on the way and picked up like 30 stories. He tells this story where he went to a comic book shop and he was like, hey, I'm just now trying to get into the Punisher. What do I need to read to know the Punisher as a character? And he was like, this, and this. And the story goes on to say, he was like, wait, aren't you the Punisher? And he was like, yeah. And he was like, don't fuck this up. And he was like, I hope I didn't fuck it up. Fat guy at a comic book shop. But yeah, they at least take it seriously enough to read them. We all know that they've all read at least something through interviews or whatever. They're all into it. They are all fans, and they want to make these not for us, not just for kids. But they make them for themselves.
They have fun doing it, and it shows.
It absolutely shows that you can take a book, turn it into a movie, but as long as you're a big enough fan of the book, Harry Potter's the perfect example of this. Obviously, that production department knew that they like, oh no, we have to do this justice. If you care enough about it, you can pull this stuff and make it magic. And they do almost every time. And looking at you, Thor 2. Looking at you.
And we live in a weird world where it's a good weird, where these people that we're referencing, you look at Jim Lee, just if you're talking about strictly comic books, there's a guy that grew up reading comic books. Like reading Neil Adams' Silver Age Batman, right?
Yeah.
And then gets to be the creative director over Batman at DC. And it's like, well, no shit, Batman's awesome now because we live in a time where the people in charge are the people that grew up reading this and want to preserve and move them in a positive direction. You know, it's just, I think that's why Iron Man works so well. It's because Favreau was a massive Iron Man nerd always, and then was like, I get to build my childhood.
He
now.
tried to get that movie made for so fucking long too.
Well, it's the same thing with Ryan Reynolds and stuff, and he didn't grow up with Deadpool necessarily, but he clearly grew up in this, this pulpy sort of comic book enjoyment environment, and then discovered Deadpool and was like, no, I need to do a real comic book.
You have a guy like Ryan Reynolds, which is a good example. You have a guy like Ryan Reynolds who maybe didn't grow up as a comic book nerd.
Right.
Or even a fan into his 30s. But somebody during the filming of a Blade movie said, you're acting a lot like Deadpool. That's your character in this movie, right? And he was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then somebody gave him a comic. He was like, okay, I'm really into this. Then read as much as he could and then made his own movie. And as a result of that movie feels like a fucking comic, but plays like a movie.
All right. Well, I mean, with all that being done, where are they going to go next? I mean, they've done so much
with the MCU.
With the MCU, yeah, 18 movies now leading up to this big event, and it just almost feels like the cinematic universe is coming to a close.
Right. It feels over. But we know, as people who live in a world that's powered by money, that there's no way.
Sorry,
it's
did you
over.
say Disney?
Yeah.
In a world that's powered by Disney.
Because I mean, there's that. There's the fact that Marvel has so many characters, so many stories that they could draw from. I mean, they don't have to end. At this point, it's really a matter of, how much longer are the fans going to keep seeing these movies?
Well, I mean, admittedly, as long as these movies continue to be made this well, I think forever.
That's always been my point.
Right.
People go, really, another superhero movie? It's like, fuck yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
as
watch
long as it's
30
good.
more Marvel movies.
Well,
I don't
right.
give a shit. I watch the bad ones, and I'm like, hell yeah. Like, I don't care.
When you've got a series like Mission Impossible and they're on like 10 now, it's like, for Christ's sake, just let it die. But that's because it's the same old mindless bullshit. But in these things, it's like, I just feel like as long as they continue to make great films, which they're getting better and better with each movie. I mean, some of them have been kind of a little bit of a dip, but on a general rule, the longer they've been at this, the better they are, at their craft.
I would say that Phase 3 is their strongest phase.
Absolutely.
Now,
absolutely.
Part of it comes down to what you and I were just talking about, Derek, a while ago, which is I think a lot of it depends on like where they're going in the future. I think a lot of it depends on what happens with this deal between them and Fox.
Right.
Because as we all know, a lot of the untouched superheroes are because of the Fox holdup. I mean, specifically with like the Marvel franchise. So you're looking at your X-Men, Fantastic Four. They had to work a lot around Spider-Man. I think that...
From Sony, yeah.
I think that if they can get Fox, and this does go through, then that's your next wave right there, is the introduction of, well, here's all the people we couldn't get that now we can use.
Are you saying that some of the Marvel characters are in a foxhole?
Yes.
That was good.
Thanks, buddy.
I actually like that one.
Buddies, because you all said something. Yeah, no, honestly, I was totally just, I guess, one of those people that thought that was a done deal. I had said with Disney's acquisition of Fox, and then Derek, you corrected me in saying that didn't happen, because you make a valid point. If Disney were to acquire Fox, Disney then owns the entirety of entertainment, except for, what did you say, the Jurassic series, the Fast and the Furious series,
Harry Potter. Those are the big
Obviously,
ones.
DC.
Yeah.
And DC.
So basically, if we just said this, if
Those are the big
if-
money makers in Hollywood.
right? If Disney gets Fox, that would mean that the only three major film industries left would be Warner Brothers, Universal, and Disney.
Yeah, basically. I mean, you've got your smaller ones out there, obviously, but
Well, because
most of the ones that you think of are owned by those bigger companies.
Right, you and I just looked at it. It's like, I asked about Paramount, but Paramount was bought out by DreamWorks, and now DreamWorks is under, was it Universal?
Yeah, it's under Universal.
That makes sense
So-
because of Shrek 40.
So, but here you go. I mean, technically, even the other ones that like would come to my mind don't even exist anymore. Like Paramount's gone. To me, Paramount
I always
Pictures
think
is
of Lionsgate.
Right.
And that's gone.
I mean,
They're not gone. They're just not their own
Well, yeah,
things
that's
they're
what I
now
meant,
subsidiaries of these other
Yeah.
larger umbrellas. But I think it's interesting, and I never, because it's been so fast. It's been in the last like 5-10 years. I never
lot
would have
has
thought
changed in
that
Hollywood.
firstly, all of the, I mean, we had at least 10 nameable motion picture companies growing up, and now it's down to 3, but 4 until this happens. But also, I guess it doesn't surprise me watching it having happened, but if you told me, oh, Disney's going to buy out most of Hollywood, I wouldn't have believed it. I'd have been, Disney's for like cartoons and kids movies, and they're amazing, but they're Disney as much as, Warner Brothers has Batman and Harry Potter. It's just, to me, it was just another contender. And I guess, did it start with the Lucasfilm buyout?
No, I would say it started with Marvel. I would say that it really, Disney as a steam engine began with the MCU. And as that began to build, then they bought Lucasfilm.
That's right.
And then as Marvel continued to chug along, they finally hit a point where they could fund another giant project.
And now they're trying to buy Fox.
And then Star Wars started happening. And so Star Wars movies feed Marvel movies, feed Star Wars movies, feed Marvel movies.
Well, I think that's where they've gotten this strength now to be just a corporate machine. Because, and I'm happy at least that Disney, it does a lot of positive things, a lot of positive outreach. I think at least they're not a company that I outright hate because of their policies and practices.
Right.
I'm glad. I do think it still puts a threat on the future of Hollywood, though. Like, I really worry.
Which is why I think this Fox deal, I don't know how it's going to go through. It's in limbo right now, but I don't see it going through how people think it's going to go through. I think they might either reach a partnership or kind of like with Sony, how they did with that, but that's kind of works, and that kind of also throws them into a weird, the same situation that they are with Sony right now, where it's like Sony's like, yeah, you have control of Spider-Man in the MCU, but we have all these other characters in the Spider-Man universe that we still own the license to, so we're going to make movies for them. We're just not going to mention Spider-Man.
Like Venom, which, P.S., I'm going to come out and say it, looks like hot garbage. It just looks like Ghost Rider, but worse. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. I'm going to go ahead and call it now. The movie looks like hot trash.
And in an earlier issue, and even on my social media, I was pretty excited for it with the teaser trailer. But yeah, the more I'm finding out about the movie, the more I just feel like it's the same cliche story we've seen 1,000 times.
It just looks
with
like
a
Ghost
new
Rider.
edgelord character. I don't know, and we can get into the positives and negatives about that when it actually comes out. We
Sure.
can really base our opinions. Something I looked up is to kind of point out the monopoly of Disney. Here are the top 15 biggest opening box office weekends of all time. We're going to start at number 15. And then, Derek, what I want you to do is I want you to count how many of those are Disney. I want you to count how many of those are Disney properties. So number 15 is The Hunger Games Catching Fire. 14 is The Dark Knight. 13 is The Dark Knight Rises. Number 12 is Batman vs. Superman. Number 11, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows number 2. Number 10, Iron Man 3. 9, Beauty and the Beast, the 2017 live-action remake. Number 8, Captain America Civil War. 7, Avengers Age of Ultron. 6, Black Panther. 5, Marvel's The Avengers. 4, Jurassic World. 3, Star Wars The Last Jedi. 2, Star Wars The Force Awakens. And at number 1, Avengers Infinity War. So out of 15, there are 8 of them.
9.
Okay, that's way more than half.
Well, the thing that you also have to go into when you think of making money back, we said this about Infinity War, is that it made its budget back in its opening weekend. Yes, technically it made its budget back, like what it took to make that movie.
Right.
But take that number and double it. That is what they spent then on marketing.
Right.
Typically. You
However-
can typically double a film's budget, like these big blockbusters, and that's how much they spend on marketing. So you have to earn back double what you put into it.
However, what then we fail to account for is not only just the remainder of the weeks and weeks some of these films stay out. Like when we went to go see Infinity War, and I know I said it in another issue, Black Panther's still playing in the theater. Like, it blew my mind that it was still going and I went, seriously? And the lady was like, yeah, they're still buying tickets, man.
It was the-
$700 million Black Panther has made.
Well, but here's the catch. Not only did it make that money, now the question is, what about the merchandising? What about the t-shirts? What about the toys? What about the lunch boxes, backpacks? The stuff that they make back from these films go on forever. Yeah. And you kind of have to also crunch numbers eventually and go, okay, so not only is Black Panther, in this movie, but how much of his toy sales from the Infinity War can we attribute to Black Panther, the movie? So they make percentages of their money back, like an insane triple, quadruple, or quintuple. When you start looking at the merchandise and stuff, it's insane the amount of money they're making.
Well, not to mention that list that I was just reading from, where Black Panther had made about $700 million. That's all just domestic, and that's of yesterday's date.
Right.
So that doesn't count in every other country that they play in. Derek, I think you actually have that number.
Yeah, the worldwide gross of Black Panther at this time is $1,342,159,000 and then some change.
1.3 billion.
So a movie that
goddamn.
costs $200 to $300 million to make.
No,
made back.
What do we say? 3 point.
For Black Panther, I think it's like 2 to 3. Avengers is 3 to 4, but I think Black Panther is 2 to 3.
Gotcha.
That made $1 billion. So the point here, I think that we're all getting at is, it doesn't matter how much these things fucking cost to make. They can make them and make their returns 2-3 times over.
True.
So money's no option. This can go as long as they want.
Well, and it's like you said, $1.3 billion, which means in theory they could make the next Star Wars budget $500-600 million. Pull from that, let that one make another close to $1 billion, and then make the next Marvel. And they've just
they make enough money. They make enough money from Infinity War. They will probably make enough money to fund the entire budget of Captain Marvel. If they make Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel flops, let's say that budget is $300 million. If they pass $1 billion, if they do another Black Panther and it passes another $1 billion, you still have $700 million that you made from the populace that you're trying to sell this movie to. You can make 2 more fucking movies and have $100 million left over.
Yeah. I don't predict that the Infinity War will do what Black Panther did as far as budget, though. As far as return. I don't see it being the cultural phenomenon that Black Panther was. I think Black Panther, there were people that saw that movie 3, 4, and 5 times that I know personally.
My counter to that would be that no other movies had this much of a build-up. I mean, like, for 8 years, people have been looking forward to Infinity War.
Yes.
And in a way, they kind of created a culture all their own with all the movies they made. And
no, I agree with that. The reason I say it is because I haven't seen the social media impact that Black Panther did.
No, see, working in an office environment, which, I mean, I don't know why I said that like a brag, but working in an office, when Black Panther came out, I was so excited to talk to people about it because we all saw it like the opening weekend and it was incredible and we all talked about it. But getting to work that next day, I was like, did you see Black Panther? Did you see Black Panther? And nobody had. Avengers, I got to work the next day and there were like, the ratio was like 6 to 1 people that had and hadn't seen Avengers. I have personally seen it 2 times. I know everyone here has seen it at least once. I know everyone here plans to see it at least one more time. It's a huge deal.
I mean, my
I'm
mom's...
not saying it's not. I'm just saying I think Black Panther's influence and overall gross will still maintain higher than Infinity War. That's my guess.
So I think the difference is a cultural versus an environmental phenomenon because Black Panther is a cultural movement.
Right.
It started something that I predict will happen contiguously for years to come, which is, Coogler and Michael B. Jordan and Chadwick Boseman and all these incredible African-American actors and writers and musicians that created the culture of this project. I think that will create that phenomenon for years and years to come. But speaking to that with Avengers, I think Avengers created an environmental phenomenon, something that the landscape is now Avengers again. I remember when the first Avengers movie came out years ago, it shook everybody. Everybody was like, oh, fuck, did you see Avengers? Because it was a big fucking deal. And we've hit that point again. It's like a cultural plateau, and it shakes the whole environment. And that's just, I think, Dylan, to answer your question, I think that's where we go from now. I think that's where these movies in this MCU is going to go from now, is they have always fought to be relevant because the Hollywood elite and Oscars and the things that make movies relevant don't seem to point credence to these movies. They kind of shove them aside as superhero movies. You have so many award-winning actors in this movie. You have so many records broken by this movie. You have so many amazing films leading up to it. Why would they stop? I think they're going to continue to make these movies. I think they're going to continue to have these same people, grinding and producing and making this amazing content. And yeah, we'll get sequels, but yeah, I definitely do think we'll get some one-off stories. And maybe not one-off, but you know what I mean? We'll get new origins with Captain Marvel. Maybe we'll see, maybe in the future sometime we'll see a Fantastic Four movie.
I mean, Marvel also has their Netflix series and stuff. They can easily introduce characters and story arcs through Netflix series.
Yeah, their Netflix series are pretty goddamn popular.
At least 2 for $4.
My thing is, it takes a lot to get your series made into Hot Toys, the 6-scale figures. It kind of takes a bit to get your, like Doctor Who has 6-scale figures, but I don't know that Hot Toys makes 6-scale Doctor Who figures. I think they do.
I think they did. I don't know that they do anymore.
But for television, that's the bar to hit. You have to hit the most popular television show of all time. Because for sci-fi and kind of a nerd landscape for TV, I think Doctor Who is the metric to hit. And if they can...
Sure.
Besides, like, Star Trek numbers?
Yeah. Sure, yeah. But if Hot Toys will make them... But Hot Toys also makes all the Avengers and these Star Wars, and they make all the crazy heroes... But I have the Netflix series Daredevil Hot Toys on my shelf right the fuck now. That's where they've gone. So yeah, you have. I mean, they have every market. They just did a fucking radio drama about Wolverine.
Yeah, they did.
I got to listen to most of it. I have to finish it. It's great.
It's Marvel's first official podcast.
Yeah, and it's all about it's like a Wolverine story.
I haven't heard of that.
It is actually called Wolverine: The Long Night. It's available on Stitcher. Free plug. People that will never hear my voice, but yeah, it's super cool. I mean, they're on everything. They're on all platforms. The only platform I would say is they're not on #1 Grammy Award-winning song charts. Oh, wait, never mind, because the Black Panther studio album, yes, the fuck they absolutely are.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, there's no reason that they can't just find the peak of the mountain and build another fucking mountain on it.
Now, I think where that future goes, to answer your question kind of more succinctly, I think where that future goes is at the end of Avengers 4, we'll see the kind of finish with your original Avengers. So I don't think that we'll see Cappy again or Iron Man, except maybe, smaller cameos here and there. I'd like to think they'd still plug them here and there, but that depends, I guess. I think you're going to see, hopefully, a Black Widow movie, but at this point, I'm not holding my breath because I really think that
they have a writer. They have a writer for it.
Okay, good. So I'd like to see that. And then I honestly think that we're going to see the new Avengers lineup. I think we're going to see Falcon. I think we're going to see Scarlet Witch. I think we're going to see, if Vision comes back, he might make another movie.
I hope they bring the Vision back.
I hope so, too.
Because I've also heard about, I don't remember who had said it, but the MCU is sort of shifting towards making Black Panther and Captain Marvel pretty much the new Iron Man and Captain America.
Well, and those two are the next ones I was going to list. I think that we're going to see basically, if they're smart, they will, without making it cookie cutter, follow the formula and go, okay, these are your two kind of leader examples. You've got these other solo movies that you can do 1, 2, or 3, trilogies, like we have the difference in Iron Man or Doctor Strange. One has 1, one has 3. And I think they make the movies for those guys and build up another big event. And whether they bring in cameos for the current existing Avengers or not, that's up to them.
I would love to see the Avengers 5, like you're saying, be a lineup that includes, Spidey, the Vision, Scarlet Witch, Falcon, Captain Marvel,
led
the
by
Black
Black Panther.
Right. And it'd be a new team. That'd be a perfect way to end.
And I think that
Phase 3.
if they got Fox, if this does go through and they get any of these characters, you could even introduce Storm. And do the whole, Queen of Wakanda thing.
We could
be a great way to introduce them.
Fingers crossed, an Illuminati movie.
Right.
That'd be pretty dope.
But see, that's what I'm saying is I think it's really cool that some of these characters have their first movie so close to Infinity War, like Doctor Strange and Black Panther, because I think they're the perfect ones to get their sequels to take place after Infinity War and kind of help bridge that gap so it's not a hard cut brand new set. I think we'll see a bleed effect for a while, a bridge effect, I guess is a better word, and we'll just see all the new ones go.
From what I have heard, Spider-Man Homecoming 2, whatever they end up calling that.
Prom,
I hope, is going to take place like moments after Avengers 4.
Okay, that's cool.
It's supposed to be the first, singular superhero Marvel MCU movie that takes place after Avengers 4, and that is what I read this week.
Now remember, we said spoilers. I really hope that that the second Spider-Man Prom, takes place seconds after Infinity War. And basically, it's the title crawl, the da-na-na-na-na-na, and then it's just a bunch of ash gets blown by the camera,
right,
and then credits roll.
Right into
Tony Stark's weeping face.
No, but he's weeping, but you also see Aunt May's head, just the back of it, and then Ned swings by in the back with a Spider-Man mask on.
He's like, somebody's got to do it.
He swings from a rope swing or something, but yeah.
Wait. Right as you said that,
What?
something fell out of your sleeve. Look right there, by your shoe.
Would you lose a button?
No, it's another one of those fucking rocks.
It's so weird. This one's like red.
Okay, but you had to have known that you had that.
No, I swear I didn't. I was thinking...
You are not that out of touch
listen.
with reality that you didn't realize that red circular pebble was in your sleeve.
No, man. Look, I was just thinking to myself, I was like, man, it'd be really cool if I had another one of those gems so I could put them in this thing that I've got at home, this jewelry thing that I've got. And I was like, man, that would be super cool.
How did you get home?
What?
We're all sitting here. How did you get home in that amount of time?
No, I haven't gone home yet.
You said you went home.
No, I meant like I had it at home, but then I brought it with me in the car. I was going to show you guys. It's this thing.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter. Listen, you need to stop trying me, okay?
Oh, shit.
That's them's fighting words.
I'm getting a little aggressive.
I feel threatened.